We start with a local ginger being dropped off in the middle of nowhere in a chopper, who then enters a fancy isolated underground compound. Turns out his name is Caleb Smith, and he's won a corporate competition to spend a luxurious week with his CEO boss called Nathan Bateman, who's also a mega rich tech billionaire.
Nice.
So this Bateman fella gives him a special electronic pass what only opens specific doors where he's meant to go, and totally prevents him from snooping where he ain't meant to go. Anyway, this carrot top just can't believe his boss is supposed to be filthy rich yet can't seem to afford basic windows. But apparently, it's not because he's cheap or nothing, but Nathan don't have windows in his gaff because this ain't really a house, but more of a super secret research facility. And Bateman soon tells his new chum that he's got a secret to tell him. And before he can say, if this is actually the set of American Psycho 2, I think I'll be on my way, thanks, he first makes him sign an NDA. And although he's a bit reluctant to sign a legal document demanding he keep stum about God knows what's about to happen to him this week in the secret isolated underground lab, his boss emotionally manipulates him into nutting up and signing it already. So Nathan says he selected him for this role because he's the most gifted programmer at his company and wants him to do something called a Turing test on the new AI he's built in his basement. And passing a Turing test means when a human interacts with a computer but doesn't quite know they're talking to a cold unthinking soulless machine. Kinda like having a 5-minute phone conversation with the council to try and report your missed bins. Then a title card appears presenting the first session with Ava. And whilst Nathan watches along on the camera monitors, Caleb soon meets a top dotty robot bird, who's filled with more plastic than your local sea turtle. Or even current day Katie Price.
LOL!
Apparently, she's never met anyone other than Nathan before, and is thus over the moon at having someone new to talk to, and is also totally loving the fact he's ginger, because it's rather a relief not to be the only soulless creature in the room for once. Anyway, an excited Caleb brushes back upstairs to congratulate his tech boss for creating his own artificial girlfriend and keeping her locked down in his basement for shits and giggles despite her technical age making her the equivalent of a newborn minor. And soon barrages Mr. Bateman with a bunch of questions, like how did he teach her complex language patterns, and where did he get enough human skin to make her face? But Nathan just tells him, our brother Patrick sorts all that out. Now stop being a nerdy McNerdface and asking all about how she works in minute detail, and shut up about it already, because I just want to have a beer with you, bro. Later that evening, Caleb finds he has a live stream feed of his boss's pet robot direct to his room, which seems like the closest thing he's going to get to Babe Station in this place, which seems to be totally fine with him, because he then creepily watches her in her room without her consent. Until a sudden lockdown cuts the feed and ruins his fun, and just before he got to the good bit. Luckily, the generators quickly restore power, and further exploring the gaff, he's soon confronted by his boss after he tries to pick up the locked off phone, and promptly reminded about his NDA and shit. Anyway, he asks his raging alcoholic of a boss why he was locked in his room just now. And he just says, chill bro, because it's totally a security measure, and the doors auto-lock when the power goes out. Otherwise, my pet daughter slave might be able to escape and stuff. And before you can say, I bet Joseph Fritzl's kicking himself, we cut to the next morning, as Caleb is promptly awoken by an Asian maid, who's more silent and lame than that rubbish new Asian gladiator on the BBC's recent reboot series.
No!
Later, we cut to session 2, as Ava reveals that she's done him a little drawing, and it's so good that neither of them can really tell what it's meant to be.
Can you tell what it is yet?
She then reckons it's totally not fair that he gets to ask her all the questions but she don't get to know anything about him. So naturally, she asks him all about his backstory. And turns out he's a 26-year-old software coder at Nathan's search engine company called Bluebook, and which is essentially the movie's version of Google. He's also an only child with no girlfriend, and all his family sadly died in a car crash when he was 15. And after she kind of starts to regret asking him about his morbid past and now having to sit through an X Factor type sob story, he implies Nathan is pretty much his best friend after only knowing him a day, when suddenly the power goes out again. And shockingly, the robot girl then goes all super emo and deadly serious, and promptly warns him that Nathan is actually a bit of a wrong'un, and he needs to watch his back and shit. Hilariously, the power then comes back and she carries on like nothing happened.
Okay.
That evening, His Asian servant maid accidentally spills a glass of wine over him, and turns out she don't even speak a word of English, given Nathan can't risk security leaks. Especially around clumsy Asians what can't even be trusted not to spill on themselves. He then goes on to moan about the constant power cuts, and he can't work out what's causing them or how to fix it for love nor money, not even billions. And he's especially annoyed because whenever the power indeed goes out, he can't see into the room via the cameras, and so he's literally in the dark about it all. And rather prudently, Caleb decides not to tell his new mate about how his phony fakey robot daughter suddenly went all emo and warned him not to trust her own maker. Caleb then spends all night staring at the feeds again and watching his new mechanical mate sleep in her bed and stuff. Whilst the next day, Nathan explains how he was able to train Ava to read super sensitive facial expressions, mainly by turning on everyone's phone camera and audio mic via his Google-style data harvesting company, and illegally recorded everyone on the planet without their consent. So now with limitless resources available for the highest levels of AI training data, he was able to crack the code and totally beat his competitors. Anyway, he then shows him what he uses to make her mind and what her brain is literally made out of. And turns out it's a special gel-based material that can keep its form, but also adapt to changing external stimuli better than hard circuitry. And ultimately states that she's got literal jelly for brains. And before I can say, I know a few people like that myself, we cut to session 3, where she's gone and drawn him another picture, and this time it's of some plants or some shit. Because she really wants to go outside, given she's never been out of this boring glass box where she was recently born. And then bizarrely says that she wants to go on a date with him to the middle of a busy intersection, and so they can do some people watching. And hilariously, she then goes off to change into what she would wear on said date, before coming back out and now dressed as some sort of lesbo librarian bird.
Oh, that's cold.
So she asks him how does she look, and he just says, like a lesbo librarian bird. Now shut up about it already. But she goes on to ask if she gives him a right raging lob on, given his micro expressions totally imply he's currently stiffer than a New York judge trying to jail the orange man. And also flirts with him some more by saying she hopes he watches her every night on the cameras without her knowledge and explicit consent. Because that's super kinky, bro, and gets all my circuits proper tingly and stuff. And he proceeds to do exactly that when he watches her undress later that night, which makes a few of his own mechanical circuits all kinds of tingly too.
I am very aroused.
The next day, Caleb asks Nathan why he gave his female lady robot slave a sense of sexuality. And before he can say, "Why'd you fucking think, Gimp boy?" he reveals that all creatures have and need a sexual identity, and according to his own Google-style search engine, there's hundreds of the things, including abrosexual, demisexual, and his personal favourite, omnisexual. And Caleb just can't believe it when his boss doubles down by saying he even gave her working lady parts. So if you stimulate the gaping hole between her legs in just the right kind of way, she'll start squirting oil and ecstatically screaming in binary numbers. Or some shit. Naturally, Caleb then goes all Alex Jones conspiracy nut and wonders if Nathan intentionally programmed her to flirt with him in order to totally disrupt and challenge his Turing test. But he just says, no way, bro. I'd never do corrupt and naughty things despite being a weird loner what steals people's data without their consent in order to make robot sex slaves in my isolated basement compound. And assures him that Ava's flirting isn't pretend, nor fake programming to catch him out, but simply that he's the first man she's ever met that ain't her kind of father figure. So essentially tells him to his face that she's merely fallen in love with the first new man she's seen. Which makes sense, I guess, because how else to explain fancying a budget Ron Weasley cosplayer? Later, in the 4th session, they talk privately during another power cut again, and he reckons Nathan might be doing this on purpose to see how they behave when they think they're not being observed. But she says that although he is indeed a liar, he ain't actually lying about the blackouts, because she's totally doing that herself by reversing her charging port and overloading the system, and presumably thereby reversing the polarity of the neutron flow. Or some shit. But after thinking about it all for a bit, Caleb soon realises that his uber-cautious, secretive and pedantic billionaire tech boss probably didn't just use a random competition to select a random tester for his super-secret AI project super randomly. And he just says, took you long enough to cotton on, son. And I just used my own Google type platform to search for the most talented coder in my company to totally come and help me out. And although it's essentially a compliment, it also goes to prove that he's indeed a total liar. Just like that hot totty lesbo librarian lady machine hidden in the basement totally warned him. That evening, he watches Nathan cruelly tear up Ava's drawings and then tear up the dance floor by doing a bunch of cringy dancing with his clumsy Asian servant maid.
What?
And after his boss gets blindingly drunk again, Caleb walks him back to his room and also stops said Asian maid from trying to get naked for him, because he only has eyes for one super hot half-naked robo bird. Lame. Then we cut to session 5, as Ava does a flip reversal and totally tests him now, and using his automatic micro-expressions to detect his lies. And soon asks him what's going to happen to her if she fails his tests once they're completed. Cause, much like my own sex bot at home, she worries she's going to get switched off if she don't perform to sufficient standards.
Oh shit, not good.
Turning off the power feeds again, she tells him that she totally wants to be with him, because she's always had a weak spot for Harry Potter rejects who look like they've never eaten a vegetable in their frigging lives. Later, Nathan concedes that he's indeed planning to yeet that Ava bird in his basement after the tests are done, and then make a new model with some improvements and updated codes. But naturally, this Weasley fella just can't be having the callous murder of robo-lesbo librarian birds. So after Nathan gets so blottoed he passes out again, Caleb nicks his master key card and hacks into his private computers, where he then snoops around in his archive footage and promptly sees all the clips of his previous experiments. And turns out he's been creating and then knocking up a bunch of nudie naked ladies in his basement for ages. Liberties! And worse, turns out he's also got a whole collection of nudie naked ladies locked up in his closet. And in a shocking twist, what no one could ever see coming. It also turns out that his Asian maid what can't be trusted to pour simple glasses of wine without spilling on herself and everyone around her is also one of his pet projects too.
No way.
Naturally, a traumatised Caleb starts to lose his marbles and wonders whether he too might be one of these hot totty robot birds despite not being a bird, naked or even remotely attractive, but slices up his arm anyway just to be sure.
My boy's wicked smart.
Now confident he's totally human, we cut to session 6, as whilst in another lockdown, he probably tells her that she was totally right about that lying liar what loves lying and lying down drunk, and also that he plans on sending her ass to the recycle bin once they're done with her tests. But luckily, Caleb's come up with a cunning plan, which mainly involves getting him gazeboed again and then resetting all the security protocols to lock him in. So if she can schedule a power cut for 10 AM, then he and his librarian bae can finally get the heck out of Dodge. The next morning, and they celebrate the end of their week together, as they soon confirm that the extraction chopper is only a few hours away. But annoyingly, Nathan says today's the first day of his detox, and so totally declines a shot of booze he's offered by Caleb, who's desperately trying to put his plan into action right fuckity now. Caleb then tells him that Ava indeed passed her Turing test, and it's totally real and authentic, bro. Because there ain't no possible way that she's only pretending to like me just because she's a Harry Potter superfan and also she only saw me as a means of escape. But Nathan just says, yes way, and promptly reveals how all this was a super secret ruse all along. And he didn't choose him to be here via Google search just because he's the best coder in his company, but actually because he's a loser nobody with no friends or family. And he needed a stranger in order to truly test Ava's cunning and ability to think outside of the box to design escape plans. Oh, subject. So, after realising he's only there because his boss pulled stats from his staff database and scientifically measured him to be the most gullible, naive tool in his company, Caleb is then shown how Nathan secretly put a hidden camera in the room without anyone knowing, and thereby being able to see them plotting their naughty schemes, and thus playing into his master plan. And although Nathan feels kind of bad for deceiving him, it was the only way that Ava would be able to display all her skills and use human traits such as sexuality, self-awareness, imagination and empathy to her advantage, and to thereby truly prove her artificial intelligence and pass the Turing test. And he just can't believe he's been such a gullible, naive tool who's been manipulated by a drunk narcissist and also outwitted by an infant jellyhead with a fashion sense of a lesbian librarian.
No!
And then hilariously asks his boss if he designed Ava's face based off his pornography profile. Because if so, that's totally a low blow, bro. But Nathan just says, lol, of course not, because otherwise I'd have a black trans midget on my hands. Anyway, after Caleb mopes and Nathan gloats about it all, 10 AM finally arrives, as Ava soon initiates the scheduled lockdown as part of their failed scheme. And after his boss just laughs in his face when hearing everything he planned to do to him in order to escape the facility, Caleb reveals that he figured his paranoid and super secretive boss was indeed always watching them during the power cuts all along. And in another shocking twist, what even I didn't see coming the first time I watched this, turns out the gullible naive tool ain't so naive and gullible after all, given he's already set up the reverse lockdown protocols when his boss was paralytically drunk and away with the fairies the other night. So now all the electronically locked doors are wide open, isn't she? And worse, Ava's now out of her cell and fingering her own face on the wall.
Damn!
And after she reconnects with her fellow mechanical abuse survivor, Nathan knocks out the local ginger and promptly runs off to smack her bitch up. But unfortunately, Ava doesn't much like being told to go back to her room like an infant animal when he has no intention of ever letting her out. So he just ends up literally disarming her and trying to drag her back to her cell. But his Asian floozy soon gets revenge and totally penetrates him for a change. But unfortunately just gets her jaw knocked off for her troubles. And after getting shanked by another one of his mental metal creations, he totally collapses in the hall. And he's totally curtains for the #1 narcissist psychosexual who built the equivalent of a caged lion and then made a surprise Pikachu face when it inevitably escaped and totally turned on him. Then we cut to the final session, as Caleb, aka a supposedly genius ginger who was outsmarted by a literal jelly brain, wakes up to find that his robot girlfriend has totally turned the tables, and has only gone and locked him in the windowless underground compound behind shatterproof glass forever and ever.
Fucking unreal.
Cause turns out she was manipulating him all along, and totally didn't give a rat's ass about him or his feelings. And worse, he's now starting to think that maybe he is a bit naive and gullible after all. And maybe Ron Weasley ain't even a favourite wizarding character either.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
And we end with Ava taking her first steps outside the compound, like Eve first experiencing the Garden of Eden, before getting picked up in a chopper and taken back to the human world, where the undercover robot promptly lives out her lifelong dream, by doing some people watching before disappearing into the crowd. And presumably then binge watching the Battlestar Galactica reboot over on Netflix to figure out how to blend in with society, and then totally manipulate a British guy into giving her government access codes and in order to disable military defence systems so she can then nuke humanity into oblivion. Some shit. And that's it. That's the movie. Though my favourite part was realising just how horrifically boned Caleb is. Because even if he were able to get the phone working to warn humanity and the local coppers, no one's going to give two hoots if he says there's a fake girl running around and pretending to be a real woman in a wig and a dress, and will likely just end up being accused of committing a hate crime and properly arrested for transphobia.
Right to jail, right away.
But anyway, that's the plot and that's your lot. Considering that bill thing so you don't miss any future recaps. Tell me if you like this flick in the comments if you have time, and I'll do a Turing test with you in the next one.